for everything that we deserve, but at the same time, like, we need to play basketball. That's what our fans crave, and that's what all of you crave as well, is you want the product on the floor. And at the end of the day, that's how you make the money, that's how you're marketable, that's what the fans get excited about, that's what the fans want to show up for. So, you know, it's business and it's a negotiation, and there has to be compromise on both sides. And, you know, we're starting to get down to the wire of it, and it's become really important. And, you know, obviously I want to help in any way I can, and I've tried to educate myself the best I can. Obviously I can't speak to every.
That right there is the most important 30 seconds the WNBA will hear all season, because while everyone's been focused on the drama, on the he said, she said of CBA negotiations, Caitlin Clark just cut through all of it with one message. We cannot afford to mess this up. And she's absolutely right.
WNBA fans are so excited because Caitlin Clark is finally back on the court playing basketball, and it seems like she is 100%. She is going 5v5. Team USA is currently holding their training camp. So all the ladies will be in Durham this weekend training. As you can see the roster here, Lauren Betts, Aaliyah Boston, Cam Brink, Paige Beckers, Veronica Burton, Sonia Citron, Caitlin Clark, Kalia Copper, Chelsea Gray, Brittany Griner, Dearica Hamby, Kiki Ariafen, Rakia Jackson, Brianna Jones, Kelsey Plum, Angel Reese, Juju Watkins, and
December 2024, Team USA training camp in Durham. 16 of the best players in women's basketball gathered for one purpose, to prepare for the 2026 FIA World Cup. But there's an elephant in the room that nobody can ignore. Because if the WNBA Players Association and the league don't figure out this CBA situation by January 9th, there might not be a 2026 season for these players to return to. And that's not hyperbole. That's the actual timeline we're working with right now. The roster reads like a who's who of women's basketball: Lauren Jackson, Brianna Stewart, Kelsey Plum, Angel Ree, Paige Bookers, and of course, Caitlin Clark. But this isn't just about basketball skills. This training camp is happening at the most critical moment in WNBA history. And what these players say off the court might matter more than what they do on it.
I think there are different things that we can find ways to say, no, like, we certainly deserve that, and we're not going to compromise on that, and then other things that we can probably compromise on. But like I said, like, this is the biggest moment in the history of the WNBA, and I don't want that to be forgotten. Similar, like, it's important that we find a way to, you know, play this next season, and I think our fans, and even everybody that has played in this league that has come before.
Listen to how she frames this. This is the biggest moment in the history of the league. Not one of the biggest, the biggest. And then she immediately pivots to what matters, finding ways to play next season. Because Caitlin Clark understands something that apparently needs to be said out loud. You can't grow a league that isn't playing games. Think about where the WNBA was 12 months ago. The 2024 season hadn't started yet. Nobody knew if Caitlin Clark would translate to the professional level. Angel Ree was still an unknown commodity as a pro. The league's average attendance was around 6,500 per game. Fast forward to today, and the Indiana Fever alone averaged over 17,000 fans per game. That's not incremental growth, that's a seismic shift. But here's what makes Caitlin's statement so significant. She's not just talking about playing basketball, she's talking about the business reality that seems to be getting lost in these negotiations. The WNBA just had its best year ever. Television ratings were up 70%. The league signed new media deals worth $2.2 billion over 11 years. Expansion fees for new franchises hit $50 million. This is the momentum you dream about in professional sport.
Up for Caitlin Clark's answer. Thank you, Caitlin. This is the biggest moment the WNBA has ever seen, and it's not something that can be messed up. I feel like I have been screaming this at the top of my lungs through all of the messiness that has happened over the past 2 seasons in the WNBA. You have a moment right now in women's basketball, and specifically in the WNBA. You have a boom that we have never seen in the history of this league. Do whatever you can to not mess it up, and they've already done multiple things that is like shooting.
And there it is, the acknowledgement that some things will require compromise, because that's what nobody wants to hear right now. But it's the truth. The players want charter flights for every team, not just playoff teams. They want a higher revenue share percentage. They want better salaries across the board. And you know what? They deserve all of that. The question isn't whether they deserve it, The question is whether you can get enough of it right now to avoid a work stoppage that could kill everything you've built. Kelsey Plum said something interesting at the same training camp. She said the CBA talks have been disheartening and that the two sides are far away from an agreement. That's December 2024, with a January 9th deadline looming. That's not a lot of time to bridge a significant gap, and unlike the NBA, which can weather a lockout because of its established fan base and multi-billion-dollar infrastructure, the WNBA doesn't have that luxury. This league is still building its foundation. You can afford to pause construction when you're only halfway done.
Playing against them. Kelsey Plum off the screen, kicks to Caitlin Clark for three. Caitlin Clark up the court. Another three. Caitlin Clark off the screen, another three. Her shot looks really good. There were other photos of her going around, I feel like the past couple weeks also, saying that it looks like she dropped some of the muscle that she did gain before last season. It's hard to tell. To be honest, you guys, I'm not really like body watching.
Watch this sequence carefully, because what you're seeing is exactly why fans have been starving for WNBA content during this off-season. Caitlin Clark hasn't played a competitive basketball game since September 25th, 2024, when the Fever lost to the Connecticut Sun in the first round of the playoffs. That's over 2 months of no Caitlin Clark basketball, and the withdrawal has been real. But look at her movement here. The footwork is clean, the release looks smooth, and there's no hesitation in her shot. All those questions about whether she bulked up too much during her rookie season, whether that contributed to her plantar fasciitis and other soft tissue injuries, they seem less relevant when you watch her move like this. She looks comfortable, she looks healthy, and most importantly, she looks like she's having fun.
We had the photos last year from Media Day when she was like flexing and all that, and you could clearly see that she had put on a lot of muscle, but it's hard to tell here, so I'm not really going to comment on it. But there were some fans that were saying it looks like she dropped some of the muscle that she put on, and a lot of people were wondering if that is why she had so many soft tissue injuries during last season. But again, I don't know, so I'm just going to leave it at that. And here's another clip, you guys, of Caitlin Clark's signature three. She's dribbling the ball up the court, goes to her left, step.
Paige Bueckers sidestepping Caitlin Clark for the game winner. And of course, this clip went viral immediately. The Caitlin Clark haters jumped on it like it was proof of something. But here's what they're missing. This is exactly what fans want to see: two generational talents going at each other in a competitive environment. Not manufactured beef, not social media drama, just pure basketball competition. The dynamic between Caitlin and Paige is fascinating because they represent different paths to the same destination. Caitlin came in as the most hyped rookie in WNBA history, delivered on that hype despite constant physical play and criticism, and established herself as a legitimate star. Paige is coming in next year with similar expectations, but a different skill set. She's a more versatile defender, and she's more willing to play within a system. The contrast in styles makes their matchups compelling, but here's the bigger point. This training camp, these scrimmages, this content, this is what the WNBA needs more of, not less. And a work stoppage would eliminate all of it. No games means no highlights. No highlights means no viral moments. No viral moments means no casual fans converting to hardcore fans. The growth engine stops.
This is the kind of basketball that so many WNBA fans have been missing. And there's another clip that is also currently going viral, and it's Paige Bueckers' sidestep three on Caitlin Clark. And now obviously the Caitlin Clark haters are loving this, but I also love this too. I love to see two great players like Paige, like Caitlin, playing either on the same team or against one another. But check this out. So there's a long rebound here. Paige gets it, pump fake, sidestep, drains the three, and that is
Angel reposting up, with Paige Bueckers trying to seal off Caitlin Clark. Jackie Young rotating over to help. This is the kind of defensive complexity that people claimed the WNBA didn't have. And yet, here it is on display in a practice setting with players who've barely practiced together. The defensive attention Caitlin commands is real. Even in a scrimmage, even with teammates who should theoretically be going lighter on each other, you can see how much effort it takes to contain her. Paige is trying to deny her the ball. Jackie Young is shading over to provide help defense. And this is without a real game plan or defensive scheme. Imagine what playoff-level defensive attention looks like. This is also why the Caitlin Clark can't play defense narrative is so frustrating. Watch her positioning here. She's not gambling for steals. She's not reaching. She's staying in front of her assignment and forcing them into help defense. That's fundamental basketball. Is she an elite defender? No, but she's competent. And for a player who carries the offensive load she does, competent defense is more than enough.
We'll just call them Team Gray right here in Team USA training camp. But it is so interesting because so many outlets are picking up this clip and like, oh, Paige Bueckers drains a three in Caitlin Clark's face. And she did. She absolutely did. But this is fun. I just love to see all these young players out.
And here's what this moment represents. All of these players from different teams, different backgrounds, different draft classes, united by a common goal, playing for Team USA, representing their country, competing at the highest level. And the energy is palpable. You can see it in how they celebrate good plays. You can see it in how they compete on every possession. This is what women's basketball looks like when it's given the platform it deserves. But let's connect this back to the CBA situation. Because everything we just watched, all of this positive momentum, all of this excitement, it all disappears if there's number 2026 season. Team USA will still exist. These players will still train. But the foundation that makes moments like this possible, the WNBA itself, would take a massive hit. Here's what makes this CBA negotiation so precarious. Both sides have legitimate points, but the consequences of failure aren't symmetrical. If the players hold firm and force a work stoppage, they lose a year of prime earning potential, and the league loses its momentum. If the league holds firm and refuses to meet player demands, they risk a strike that could crater fan interest and damage relationships with players permanently. The players are asking for things that seem reasonable on paper: charter flights for all teams, not just during playoffs. The WNBA currently allows teams to use charter flights for back-to-back games and playoff series, but regular season travel is still mostly commercial. For context, the NBA has had full charter flight access for years. The WNBA is asking players to compete at an elite level while dealing with commercial flight delays, layovers, and the physical toll that comes with that kind of travel. It's not sustainable. They're also pushing for a higher revenue share. The current CBA, agreed to in 2020, doesn't have a fixed revenue split like the NBA's 50-50 model. Instead, the WNBA has a complex formula that guarantees players receive the greater of 50% of league revenue or a fixed dollar amount. The players want clarity, and they want a bigger piece of the pie. Given that the league just signed massive media deals worth $200 million per year starting in 2026, their timing makes sense. But here's where it gets complicated. According to Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, the WNBA has lost money in most years of its existence. The league is subsidized by the NBA to the tune of tens of millions of dollars annually. Now, there's debate about how real those losses are. Some analysts argue the accounting is deliberately conservative, that the WNBA is more profitable than the league admits. But even if we take the league's numbers at face value, there's a cash reality that can't be ignored. The players counter that you have to spend money to make money, that investing in charter flights, better salaries, and improved working conditions will pay dividends in player performance, fan experience, and league growth. And they're probably right. The question is whether the league can afford that investment right now, or whether they need another year or two of revenue growth before making those commitments. What makes Caitlin Clark's comments so important is that she's acknowledging this tension. She's not saying the players don't deserve what they're asking for. She's saying that the cost of not playing basketball might be higher than the cost of accepting a compromise. And that's a mature, business-minded perspective that, frankly, more people in these negotiations need to adopt. Think about what's at stake here. The 2024 WNBA season averaged 1.2 million viewers for nationally televised games. That's up from 440,000. The WNBA Finals averaged 1.63 million viewers, the highest since 2012. Attendance was up 48% year over year. These aren't marginal improvements. This is explosive growth. And it's growth that's directly tied to the presence of players like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. But growth is fragile, especially in women's sports, where media attention can evaporate quickly if the product isn't consistently available. The NWSL, the National Women's Soccer League, learned this the hard way. They had momentum in 2021, then dealt with front office scandals and inconsistent scheduling in 2022, and their viewership dropped. It took them 2 years to recover. The WNBA can't afford that kind of setback right now. There's also the expansion factor to consider. The WNBA is adding a team in San Francisco for the 2025 season. They've announced plans for teams in Portland and Toronto. Expansion fees are $50 million per team, which tells you that investors believe in the league's future. But those investors are betting on continuity. They're betting on Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and Paige Bueckers being on the court, generating headlines and selling tickets. A work stoppage puts all of that at risk. Caitlin Clark specifically has turned down multiple lucrative opportunities to focus on the WNBA. She was offered a spot in Ice Cube's Big Three League. She declined. She was approached about playing overseas during the off-season. She declined. She's been selective about endorsement deals, choosing partners that align with growing women's basketball rather than just maximizing her personal income. Her commitment to the league is unquestionable. And when someone with that level of commitment says, "We need to find a way to play," everyone should listen. The January 9th deadline is real. If a new CBA isn't in place by then, the current agreement expires. The league could impose a lockout. The players could go on strike. And once you're in that territory, once you're dealing with work stoppages and legal battles, the relationship between players and league management becomes toxic. Trust evaporates. And even when you eventually reach an agreement, the damage lingers. So what's the solution? Compromise. Real, meaningful compromise from both sides. The players need to identify their non-negotiables and be willing to phase in some of their other demands. Maybe full charter flights for all teams aren't feasible in 2026, but partial charter access with a commitment to full access by 2028 could work. Maybe the revenue share doesn't hit 50% immediately, but there's a graduated scale that gets there over the life of the agreement. The league needs to recognize that player demands aren't unreasonable. These women are elite athletes, generating real revenue and real fan interest. Treating them like a charity case or a developmental league does long-term damage to the WNBA's credibility. If you want to be taken seriously as a professional sports league, you have to invest in your product like a professional sports league. What Caitlin Clark did at that Team USA press conference was give both sides a reality check. She reminded everyone what's actually important: playing basketball, growing the game, building on the momentum they've created. Everything else is secondary. All the negotiating tactics and public posturing are secondary to that core mission, and if the WNBA and the Players Association can't figure out how to make that happen, if they let this moment slip away because of ego, stubbornness, or short-term thinking, it will go down as one of the biggest fumbles in sports history. The next few weeks will determine the trajectory of women's basketball for the next decade. Will the WNBA build on the incredible momentum of 2024, or will they squander it with a work stoppage that alienates fans and damages the brand? Will players get the working conditions and compensation they deserve, or will they be forced to choose between their principles and their careers? These are the questions that matter. And Caitlin Clark just told us exactly what the answer should be: find a way to play. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about: the game, the fans, the future of women's basketball. Everything else is just noise.